Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Small and Medium Fleets Transitioning to Clean Fuels and Vehicles, hosted by the State of Sustainable Fleets. My name is Nate Springer, and I'm the Vice President of Market Development at Gladstein, Neandros and Associates, or GNA. This is now the fourth year of State of Sustainable Fleets. The project is supported by our title sponsor, Penske, Shell, and Daimler Truck, as well as this year's supporting sponsor, Dana. State of Sustainable Fleets is the leading technology-neutral resource for fleets to understand the development of sustainable technology adoptions by fleets. Each year, we set the record straight on the markets for efficiency, biodiesel, and renewable diesel, as well as CNG, propane, and battery electric and fuel cell electric vehicles. It is a publicly available resource located at stateofsustainablefleets.com, where we assess the most important developments across these technologies in our market brief once annually, but also produce a plethora of educational resources for the industry like today's webinar and previous webinars that were recorded. Our fleet mini guides help orient fleets to clean drivetrains like propane, compressed natural gas, or CNG, battery electric, and fuel cell electric vehicles. All of these are available for free. Here are the key findings from last year's market brief. Renewable fuels are experiencing a golden age with record growth in supplies of renewable diesel and renewable natural gas, supported by clean fuel programs such as the California Low Carbon Fuel Standard. Renewable natural gas has now fully replaced fossil-based compressed natural gas, or CNG, in California transportation. CNG and propane are mature, proven technologies with positive total cost of ownership, especially for delivery, school, and paratransit fleets in the case of propane, and refuse, transit, and dedicated heavy-duty delivery in the case of CNG. They no longer need grants and incentives, but many grants and incentives are still available to them. Battery electric vehicle demand by fleets is growing dramatically, despite ongoing supply chain disruptions, delays in installation infrastructure, and high heavy-duty vehicle costs. We expect to see that continue and grow in the future as major manufacturers ramp up their production lines. Hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles are closer to reality than many think, and grant-funded demonstrations as well as expansion of the public hydrogen station network, mostly for light duty, is growing. And this is no longer just a California story. While California has directed significant resources and regulations towards cleaning its air by building the market for clean fleet technologies, we see uptake of these same regulations by other states, record funding by the federal government, and adoption by fleets nationally. Please sign up on our website to be the first to receive this year's market brief, or join us live for the launch on May 1 at ACT Expo in Anaheim, California. A discount to attend ACT Expo will be available at the end of this webinar. With that, I'm delighted to introduce today's speakers for what I know will be a great discussion about adoption of these technologies by small and mid-sized fleets. Keep in mind that this discussion will be very focused on how other small and mid-sized fleets can learn from these leading early adopters. Specific learnings and actions that these fleets take to realize not only sustainability, but operational performance and cost benefits from these technologies, and how they overcome barriers to doing so. We invite you to submit your questions on this topic during the discussion. With that, I'm pleased to introduce Keith Williamson, President and CEO of Titan Freight Systems, Keith Wilson, from Titan Freight Systems, Tony Williamson, Director of Compliance and Sustainability with Total Transportation Services, also known as TTSI, and Lisa Maccabee, Vice President of Maccabee Trucking. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us today. I think I'd like to turn to Lisa to start us out with the discussion. Could you please introduce yourself and Maccabee Trucking briefly, and tell us what types of sustainable technologies that you're using, and about how many of each?
Maccabee Trucking has been in business for 53 years. Our main customer is United States Postal Service. We started our venture on going green in 2014. We started by purchasing 2 used CNG trucks from Swift Transportation in 2017. We then added 7 propane autogas trucks in 2020, and we added 4 more CNG trucks in 2021, and we just added 10 more propane autogas trucks in 2022. Our goal is by 2025, 2026 that our whole fleet be convert it to either propane, CNG, or maybe electric one day when it becomes more affordable.
Lisa, if you could just, that was fantastic to hear about your goal and your adoption. If you could just remind us about how big of your fleet is your fleet already in general, and what kind of business do you do?
Okay, our fleet, we have 70 box trucks and tractor trailers. Of that, there are 17 propane auto gas, 6 CNG trucks. Our main operation is we're contract for the United States Postal Service. We service the Postal Service out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and Greenville, South Carolina. We currently have 8 contracts from the United States Postal Service in the Mid-Atlantic Southeast area.
Thank you, Lisa. Keith, I want to turn to you with a similar question. If you could introduce yourself, your fleet size and location, and tell us which sustainable technologies that you're using and the relative scale of your adoption.
All right, thank you. And I've turned off the mute button, so I hope I'm okay on this one. Keith Wilson, Titan Freight. Thank you, Nate. We're based out of Portland, Oregon, and we operate in the tri-state area of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. We have 50 power units, and we have 150 trailers, and we run a 7-terminal overnight operation. We primarily focus on LTL, the LTL segment in the Northwest. And to focus on the sustainability, about 2010, we came up with what was called the Vision 2020. So we saw UPS, FedEx, and a lot of larger fleets saying we're going to reduce our emissions by 20% by the year 2020. We adopted that same sort of vision. We're a very engaged, focused company. Sustainability was one of our core values, so we thought we'd have no problem doing it. The first thing we tackled was our forklift operations. We converted from all new purchases went from propane to electric. And then we electrified our shop, our maintenance facility, because that was really the low-lying fruit, if you will. And then in 2020, we converted our Oregon fleet over to 100% renewable diesel. And then next month, we'll get the first 3 electric trucks in Oregon delivered to us from Freightliner.
Congratulations. And I want to dive into that experience a little bit more in a few minutes. But before we do that, let's make sure that Tony, you get to bring us home on the introductions. If you could tell us a little bit more about where TTSI is operating and what experience and vehicle counts that you've had with your heavy-duty CNG, battery electric, and even fuel cell electric vehicles.
Thanks, Nate. We appreciate to participate in this webinar. My name is Tony Williamson, and I am the Director of Compliance and Sustainability for TTSI. TTSI is a third-party logistic company headquarters in Rancho Dominguez, California. And we operate in all major ports in the United States, as well as the intermodal yards. We probably have over 20-something operational yards nationwide. Our fleet count right now is power that we own is over 800 units. We own over 6,000 chassis, trailers, flatbeds. TTSI started this journey in the alternative fuel in 2007 when the ports of LA and Long Beach announced the Clean Air Action Program. In 2008, we had already converted 106 old diesel trucks to clean diesel. 2008, we also piloted 15 of the LNG 15-liter trucks. In 2010, we had up to 57 LNG trucks in our fleet. And then in 2011, we powered the first hydrogen fuel cell in the world in a drayage application. 2015, we started battery electric. And in 2017, we started demonstrating the Cummins 12-liter CNG trucks. And to that point, we now have 96 CNG trucks in our fleet. We have 10 battery electric trucks in our fleet. We have 4 yard tractors that are battery electric. And we look to start cleaning our fleet going forward. We will not purchase any more diesel or lease any more diesel trucks. We will go to CNG. And then as the technology advances for its battery and hydrogen fuel cell, we'll start looking at those applications for our operation.
It's a really deep experience represented by this group and a high uptake, including where Keith had talked about total conversion to renewable diesel of one of his Oregon fleet, I think it was, and then Lisa and Tony talking about transitioning fully. We're going to have a lot to discuss here. I want to get started on really one of the elephants in the room that I think most of our audience is asking, and that's really how much more do these clean technologies cost? Now, I realize we can't get into detail about any specific purchase agreements with specific vendors, so let's start with which of these are cost effective today. Lisa, maybe you can kick us off. You'll have to unmute again.
Here we go. CNG for us is a challenge. It was at the beginning and still a little bit of a challenge because of the states we're located in. But we are presently applying for grants to purchase more CNG tractors. On the other hand, on the propane, the cost of the propane actually is cheaper than buying a brand new diesel box truck. So we're about the same cost. So we could purchase that and not even have to worry about grant funding or any extra incentives. Now, incentives help and grant funding helps. But as we progress farther in my state of South Carolina, hopefully we'll have more opportunities in the future to have more grants in the state of South Carolina. North Carolina now has a great DEER program, and South Carolina's moving toward it. They have a DEER program, but they're not pushing as much as North Carolina. The cost for the CNG is probably $40,000 to $50,000 more for the fueling system than it is on the diesel. And there are some CNG providers out there now that are providing you, and they'll pay the difference for the fuel system if you go with them as the fuel provider. So there's different options out there, but it's not as big of an elephant in the room for the cost as big as the elephant is for the clean air that we're cleaning up. So you got to look at cost here versus cost there. You might have to pay a little higher on your front to get started to go clean, but the rest of it will pay off when you finally make a difference in your own environment. So I don't think it's an elephant. I think it might be a little white elephant, but it can be fixed. There's different options, okay?
No, I love that. And before we move on, I want to bring Tony in on CNG as well. But are you on the fueling? I understand that fueling is less expensive with CNG or propane. Is that the case for Maccabee?
Okay, yes. CNG, it depends on how you negotiate your price. It is cheaper now than diesel. I cannot discuss how much I pay for CNG, of course, or therefore for propane. I do know that since diesel prices has gone up and through the last couple of years, I have saved tremendously on the cost of fuel by having CNG and propane. The propane, the difference right now, I would say it'd be 40 to 50, maybe a little higher percentage difference in the cost per gallon for diesel. So the cost effectiveness of the fueling is very, very high. As long as you negotiate your price with your fueling provider and you try to get it locked in for a certain time so you can figure out your budget. That'll help you also plan on the future and how more you can put more green vehicles into your fleet. So the cost of fueling and the infrastructure for the fueling, I fuel here right now personally in Blacksburg, South Carolina. I have my own fueling station. We're looking at putting our own propane fueling station in Charlotte, North Carolina. When it comes to CNG, we're on the I-85 corridor of alternative fuels. So I have a whole line up down in I-85 to be able to fuel my fleet. That's who I decided to go with, and who I decided to negotiate the price with is where I fuel. But you can't go wrong with the cost considering the cost of diesel, and it will help offset some of the cost of the vehicles for CNG. So I recommend it as cost effective for fuel, definitely. And especially when they said we couldn't get diesel at the pumps and my trucks have to go because of US mail, I didn't have to worry because I had plenty of CNG and plenty of propane around that I could get my fleet out there and running.
Tony, is your experience with CNG similar to Lisa? Are you seeing some additional cost savings since you're in a lot of your operations are in the ports of LA and Long Beach and a very high cost diesel state? What's your experience been?
Well, we don't have the same issues that Lisa have because the infrastructure in California for CNG and LNG, for that matter, is abundant. Our Bakersfield operation, we have our own fueling station on site, and we operate 39 trucks out of there, which will soon go to 60 trucks here within the next couple of months. Our Los Angeles facility, we are domiciled on the property with clean energy, so we have on-site fueling for both our operations in California. In Northern California, we're currently running 4 trucks, but those trucks are filled through Clean Energy's infrastructure. We do have 6 trucks out in South Carolina and at the port of Port of Savannah. There is a station there, and we're able to get fuel there. So we don't have the issues with infrastructure. For its price, Lisa is dead on that. CNG, LNG is lower than diesel, which helps our operation tremendously.
Thanks for sharing that, both of you. And Keith, anything to add and really focusing on the cost question? Are you seeing either parity or even potentially savings from any of your clean technology adoptions and investments so far?
Yeah, interesting that Lisa and Tony had noted the CNG. In Oregon, we only have 4 public stations. So it's a completely different sort of focus on clean energy in Oregon versus those other jurisdictions. But what we've done is by utilizing renewable diesel and converting our fleet over, we have access to that. It's limited, but we buy it in such a large quantity that we can get it at about 10 cents or more per gallon lower than petroleum diesel.
Wow.
And that's primary. You hit it at the front of this meeting, Nate. It was when you look at California and their low carbon fuel standard. In Oregon, we have the Clean Fuels program. In Washington, our neighbor, they have the low carbon fuel standard, and then British Columbia has it as well. So we have what is called the Pacific Coast Collaborative, where we all have these clean fuels programs that really buy down the cost of clean energy. And that price difference is extraordinary when you compare it against a gallon of diesel. When you buy it in 10,000 gallon increments, the savings is dramatic. But that's only one side of the savings. Renewable diesel, as we've determined and worked with Old Dominion and Penske and these other large carriers that are using it, we're getting a 2 cent per mile reduction in our maintenance costs. Because, renewable diesel has up to 40% less particulate matter or black carbon or soot going into the crankcase. And our DPF filters on a diesel exhaust system is designed to capture that. Well, if you have less soot going into your exhaust system, you have less pressure, everything just is working normally. Since we've gone live 3 years ago, we haven't had one regen, which is the bane of our existence. When a driver has the truck taking control, pulled over to the side of the road, heated to 1300 degrees to just blow out the DPF. We haven't had one, and we haven't replaced one box in any of our diesel trucks using renewable diesel. And one box can be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 cost, and we've all experienced that. So we've really had not only the twin benefit of reduction in our overall cost of the fuel, but we've had a significant reduction in our overall maintenance cost, and then just employee benefits in workplace safety and enjoyment. Renewable diesel has no smell. There's very little fumes, and so you've had a tremendous benefit just in driver and mechanic quality of the workplace. So it's really been almost like a triple threat benefit.
No doubt. This is, I didn't even expect to hear all of this. Now, just to recap, renewable diesel, it sounds like it's burning cleaner. You in Oregon, Washington, and California, you can get it at a lower cost. And you also get the savings of fewer DPF changes and a few other maintenance and operational benefits. That's interesting. I know that you, Keith, and then also Tony over at TCSI have some experience with planning for and actually using and adopting some of these newer technologies. You know, CNG and propane, even renewable diesel, and just diesel generally, been around for so long that they've had a chance to optimize. But you've got much more expensive technology that is newer in the case of zero emission vehicles, especially battery electrics and fuel cells. Can you talk about your approach to using grants and partnerships with vehicle and infrastructure providers that help bring that cost down?
Tony, you want to go first, sir?
Okay. Yes, we have been using grants since 2008 and become very good at recognizing grants for these technologies. Since this technology is new, of course, the price of a vehicle will be also, more than to the diesel day cab. That's what we compare everything to, the price of a diesel day cab. Through the years, we have accumulated, and I did a tally the other day, $16.7 million in grants for trucks and infrastructure since 2007. So, and we will continue to look for grants in order to level the playing field for these new technologies.
And is that your job? Do you have someone else that does that as a full-time or semi-full-time basis?
In 2009, I was tasked with that with our late CEO, Vic LaRosa. He said, Tony, there's money out there and I want you to go get it. I had a clue of what was going on. I hired some grant writers, kind of learned what they did. And in 2010, I was writing my own grants and applying for these funds. So our department now, the compliance, we go out and we solicit grants, and if it fits our operation nationwide, we'll apply for them.
Well, congratulations on your success. Keith, I know you've got a partnership, I think it's with your local utility to help you install infrastructure charging. Can you talk about that and any others that you've learned to really go after grants and incentives and partnerships?
You bet. So we're going to receive our first 3 electric trucks next month, and it's really been a journey of 3 years to get to this point. We're very fortunate to have Freightliner, their manufacturing base is in Portland, so we've been able to really follow their progress through. But I often say when people say, I want to buy an electric truck, I said, well, okay, you'll really want to focus on grants, but be aware you're going to also have to buy a gas station at the same time. And by that, I mean the charging infrastructure. So the trucks are very expensive. The units we are receiving are about $400,000 per unit. When you think about a diesel truck at 130, 140 just for a day cab, you can see that 2.5x is significant. Grants were critical. We were fortunate to receive a VW mitigation grant, and it's going to cover 75% of all costs, both the truck and the charging infrastructure. So we're really fortunate, but that's going to be limited. It's a certain amount of tranches that are available. And after that, we certainly are going to look for Oregon grants. They're trying to add grants, which are similar to what Tony gets or receives down in California. The HVIP program allows, I think, $125,000 credit per truck. So that's something that California enjoys that Oregon doesn't yet, but we're working in our legislature to do that. So you can see that 75% helps. And now the utility you mentioned, Portland General Electric has been a great partner. The charging infrastructure for the 6 charging dispensers we're receiving is about $1 million. So when you think about that, we've never had to purchase that in the past when we buy a diesel rig, because there's 800,000 dispensing units throughout the United States. And our charging infrastructure, which we are just about done creating, will be the 2nd charging station in Oregon. So you can see it's still very new. But PGE is covering half of the costs, but we had to sign a 10-year contract for about 4.5 million kilowatts. We have to deliver them that energy. And it sounds like a lot, but it's really not. It's about half of what our expected usage is. So you can see it's really favorable, but they're really helping us along the way. Our bank has been very helpful as far as an equipment line of credit. Freightliner has been very helpful as far as just giving us the visibility into their equipment, their costs. But you're right, grants are the only way we've been able to really allow this lift to happen. But it's been not grants, but also help from our utilities people really coming forward to get this off the ground. So I've been really happy with the partnership with a host of different stakeholders that really want to get this going. And to Lisa's point at the beginning, it's about reducing our emissions. That really is that focus and that core that we're trying to get to.
And the perfect pivot here, because I wanted to bring Lisa into the discussion. It sounds like you're just now getting into grants yourself. Can you tell us anything you've learned about that experience, as well as, and I think you kind of mentioned this at the beginning, some different financing and partnership options with either your vehicle or dealership, vehicle OEM or dealership, or your fueling provider. Share a little bit more about all of that.
Well, I have learned in the last year, and I am applying, and I have some assistants applying to more grants in North Carolina, because at one time my operation was 60% South Carolina, 40% North Carolina. So that put me at a disadvantage. But in the last 2 years, that is reversed. I have 80% of my fleet running in North Carolina and 20% of my fleet running in South Carolina. So it has opened up some avenues about grants. Unfortunately, I was not able to get on the VW grant because of, at the time, the availability was limited based on percentages. But now I'm looking at the DARE grants. I'm also looking at some Environmental Protection Agency grants. And plus, when you have your CNG provider, there are some out there that I'm approaching now that will help you pay for the difference in the fuel program that you put in your system, the fueling system that you actually put in the trucks. So I'm reaching out now to see how I can do that in the near future. Also, my propane provider, Boston Auto Gas, Alliance Auto Gas, Piedmont, well, Duke Energy now, have helped me, with pricing for fuel so far. And I have a strong hold with them, with the people that they work with, to help me with some of this grant writing, and also to help me find the people and find the assets or the people that I need to talk to help me find the assets to afford for more affordability. But the whole thing is being a small company. It is the contacts you make on your journey. So I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of people in the background, from Propane Education Council, a lot of stakeholders in North Carolina, South Carolina, a lot of providers across the United States that are willing to help us. So that is valuable, because when you go on this journey, sometimes when you first begin it, you feel like you're all alone, especially when there were no grants. Like Keith there with only 4 fueling stations in all of Oregon. So it's good along the way that you make the friendships and you collaborate with people like yourselves that I'm sitting here speaking with today, so you can educate each other and help find the money that's elsewhere that you never even knew about. So it's all about giving out and educating. Plus, while you're given education, someone gives you education. So that really helps.
Those are great lessons, Lisa, and we've heard the partnership and, hey, you're not alone, I think, from everyone here on this. I want to encourage everyone to submit questions from the audience. One that just came in that I think is super relevant right now says, we've heard financing from banks and others can be hard to secure for zero-emission trucks. Can any of you speak to your experience working with financiers and insurance providers on this technology?
Can I take that first?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. The first thing you have to do, like I said, is educate. My bank, we've used our bank for several years. They had never heard of alternative fuel trucks. And I educated my lender, and also my bank's also is my insurance agent for my commercial. So I educated everybody at the same time. and they're standing in line helping me get more and more. They want me to get more because the more I succeed, the more my financial institute's going to succeed. So, if your bank does not want to be involved and seems confused, I just suggest you go find another bank.
That's one way to handle it, but it sounds like you've got a great relationship with yours, and they were amenable to your growth, your business and such. Keith or Tony, anything to add about your experience with banks or insurance providers?
I certainly have a first-person experience. So we've been traveling the battery electric road for 3 years. We're really interested at the opportunity, and so we brought in all of our stakeholders, which was KeyBank, and we've worked with KeyBank for over 20 years. And they said, this is wonderful. We've got a brand new program called Key for Green, and we're going to utilize that to finance your fleet. We thought that's great. Kept talking with them every 4 or 5 months. We said, hold on, technology isn't there, technology isn't there. And so when finally we get the bill and we're getting ready to pay for our down payments, we said, okay, we're ready to go. And they said, okay. And then, well, it's not called Key for Green anymore, it's called this. And because it was so new to them, their program was new. It took us 6 months before they stood up this brand new program. So you can see everybody wants to participate. The stakeholders are there. They were very interested, but they didn't have the internal infrastructure to recognize, wow, it's not a $130,000 diesel truck. What do you mean it's 400K? What do you mean you got to have a $1 million infrastructure to go with it? And so we had to jump through all these hoops, but it was a process. But their intention was good from the beginning. It did take time. And so I would say to anybody going down this road of alternative technology, alternative transportation, make sure you bring your stakeholders along and talk to them early and often, because the uncertainty of them and their new programs is going to take them time to change. And that's what we've had to recognize. But it took a while to get the equipment line, which is like $2 million. They just weren't used to it. But the desire was very strong within their organization because they see that fits their sustainability program as well. So communicate early, often, and get in front of them, and then expect some delays, but they'll come along.
Yeah,
Tony, I see you shaking your head. Anything to add? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, just to add, we got a big advantage over Keith and Lisa is that in California, the regulation is really pushing the growth of zero emission, and it started, in the early 2000s. So our lenders and insurance providers have had the heads up. Now, our lender, they have grown with the technology, so there was no issue with the finance part on it. Well, of course, I'm just speaking for our accounting. They'll probably have a different take on that. But for the insurance companies, we have been priming them since 2011 and letting them know that, hey, this technology is coming, and your underwriters need to know about this technology. And we've had underwriters come to our facility because we've been doing demos ever since 2011 with the hydrogen trucks. So they would come out and we'll put them in the trucks, and they were like, oh, this is great. I was like, yes, this is great, but you're going to have to insure these trucks. Now, initially, they were talking about like a diesel truck was probably about $8,000 annual on insurance. They were coming in like $15,000. And wow. Our CEO Vic says, okay, you got to get it down, because if you have it up that high, nobody will buy it because they can't afford to operate at those levels. And through the years, we have seen that the price of insurance go down on these zero emission trucks. Now our fleet, we have a substantial size fleet, so we're able to negotiate our rates, which includes our battery electric and eventually the fuel cell truck. So we're in a good place right now for as lending and also insurance.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go for it, Lisa.
I would like to apologize. I hope I did not offend anybody that's in the banking industry, but I just feel so strong for going green that, educate. That's why I said they don't want to be educated. They don't work with to get another bank. I didn't say don't work with them, but that's what I meant. So I hope I didn't offend too many bankers out there.
Yeah, I don't know how many bankers we have on the line, but, noted and recorded. But why don't we stick with that for a second, and not the bank so much as your enthusiasm. And I want to ask each of you, we've talked a bit, and I think rightly so, about some of the challenges and the barriers and such. But I want to just open it up to any of you. Are there any benefits, expected or unexpected? I think, Keith, you highlighted a couple a second ago. Is there any interest or enthusiasm from drivers or resistance? But what are some of the benefits of adopting these technologies, of going green, of helping the environment while you're helping your business?
Just from a reputational standpoint, we've seen a lot of tailwind with, being the first is a real heady experience. Obviously, we haven't experienced any downsides because we haven't even received a truck yet. We know that if it breaks down, it's a tow. Coming back to us, because it's not about running out of diesel and then having a mechanic go out there and prime the engine or anything like that. So we know problems are going to occur, but reputationally in the area, it's been a strong tailwind for us. Everybody's excited. Our drivers are excited. I think the drivers are not reticent at all. I think they're ready to really grasp this. And then, I work with Matt McClellan at Covenant a lot.
Covenant Logistics.
Yeah, really good guy. He's in charge of their sustainability. And he also says, while companies aren't asking for sustainable ESG requirements yet from carriers, he sees it coming. So I think this is preparing us for the future to be able to have an advantage in contract negotiations because we are at or near zero emissions. So while I don't think we're really getting any material benefit from our customers yet, I do think that this is going to be an important play in 5 or 10 years, that our fleet is decarbonizing, or that we're at that forefront of it. So I think that there's probably some benefits with certain customers that are really focused on that in the future. It's not affecting our business. We're not having customers asking for that yet, but I do think the business and the benefit proposition is in tomorrow, not so much today, Nate.
Tony, Lisa, any benefits you want to highlight? Yeah, Lisa.
Well, like you said, contractually, we're contractors for United States Postal Service, and our new leader is very, very, very strong on Go Green. With whether it be electric, they are pushing electric hard because the requirement's going to be required in California and other states. Whether it be CNG, LNG, or propane auto gas. As far as the drivers, I had one driver only buck me one time saying he was not going to drive a diesel truck. I mean, a propane truck, he wanted a diesel truck. So that day there was no diesel truck seen there, so he had to take a propane truck. So he got back from his route. He walked into my office with a tan Hyundai. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Can that be my truck from now on?" It just took one time driving a quiet, clean fuel system for him to see the difference between it. I mean, it's like night and day. Mechanic wise, all we have to do is change spark plugs, oils, brakes, and all that on propane auto gas. As long as you take care of those things, you don't have to worry about those $15,000-$20,000 bills on the DEF systems. I am looking into renewable diesel, but I've spent probably $20,000 on several units in the past year because of that. And that in itself is a savings. But the other thing is, it proves to me that DEF system is working harder and harder to keep us from polluting the air. Whereas I know my propane auto gas is not polluting air at all. So if those systems are so quick to go down, how are they really preventing the emissions that we're putting out in our environment? Now, I'm willing to look into renewable diesel, since he said there was a big benefit with that. I never looked into that. But I also am going to be doing a pilot with a company where we're going to convert a diesel tractor to CNG. So I'll let you know how that turns out in the near future. So, there's different alternatives. So
I'll have a follow-up webinar next year to see how things are going.
that'll work.
Tony, anything to add on benefits that haven't been mentioned yet?
Yeah, the biggest benefit is going to be the environment. Back in let's see, the first week of April 2020, right when the state of California shut down, there was no traffic on the 405, and everybody knows the 405 is the world's greatest parking lot. I was traveling, and you can just see the mountains, how clean the air was, because over a week's time there was no traffic on the freeways, and there was no smog whatsoever. And I do believe that Los Angeles had the best air quality for that period of time, first part of April 2020. So the benefit is going to be the clean air. Also in 2003, I got my master's from Cal State Long Beach in logistics. And our thesis is we had to go down and we did a survey on the 710, a study on the 710. And we would go down to the port to survey the drivers. We would be there at 5 in the morning because that's when the queue lines start to enter the port. And you can taste, after about 5 or 10 minutes, you can just taste the diesel in the air. When the ports of Long Beach and LA came up with the first Clean Air Action Plan, and after 2013, the air was totally different. So we are trending in the right direction. The zero emission trucks will help us get to the air quality standards that our kids, our grandkids, great grandkids will come to appreciate. So we're in the right direction.
That's great. Thanks for all of you sharing those great stories. I want to draw on another question from the audience here, transitioning back to CNG a little bit more specifically. Matt from Wegmans asks, for those of you running CNG, have you made it a priority to source RNG, that's renewable natural gas? And if so, has it been easy for your suppliers to provide it at a reasonable cost? I think that's Lisa and Tony.
I have been looking for renewable natural gas. Right now, my providers in my area has not been able to tell me when that will be available, but I am looking into that. Last Tony is, I'm sure renewable natural gas is everywhere in California. I wish I lived in California, Tony. I thought I'd never say that, but here we go. But they are starting to offer renewable natural gas, and I believe there'll be more of that available in the near future. There are some LNGs that are out here that they're converting to renewable natural gas because the LNGs are not viable where we are. So I am looking into it. The availability, I think, will be there for me soon, but it's not available at the moment.
As far as our fleet, we are running renewable natural gas in all our trucks in California. Of course, that's all where 90 trucks are. In Savannah, I do not believe they have renewable natural gas at that station, but we haven't asked them when, and they have not got back with us. But we do run renewable natural gas in California.
Great question from the audience. Another one that came in that is probably going to be best for both Keith and Tony. What kind of range are you either expecting or getting from your battery electrics? And I guess in the case of Tony, for fuel cells.
Okay. So for as EV, last year we did a pilot program with Nikola. We demoed 2 of their trucks for 90 days. We kept one truck with 25 miles from the port, and we ran the other truck up to 71.2 miles from the port. The truck that we kept 20 miles from the port, the state of charge used for that particular shift was only 24 to 28%. The state of charge for the truck going to the Inland Empire, 71.2 miles, the state of charge used was 34%. So we were able to run those trucks. We only ran it on the day shift, but we were able to get 2.5 shifts before we actually charged those trucks. We were shocked when we saw the results, and it ended up with us getting 10 of those battery electric trucks because we used those in our Southern California drayage, and we had any issues with with range. Now we do keep those within 80 miles, but those trucks are probably can get up to about 275 on a single charge.
Wow.
That's great.
Keith, are you
Yeah.
expecting similar?
We were going back and forth on battery size. Battery size is the amount of the truck cost. And so we were originally we tried to get a dual port charge and a larger battery. We were going to try and put it on line haul and run the truck 20 hours. And then a large truck operator was going to put in a DC fast charger at one of our truck stops. So we thought, this is great, dual port. We'll get 20 hours a day out of it. But when we really put pencil to paper, we weren't able to get it. So we went from the big battery down to the smaller battery on these first 3 heavy duty electric trucks. And so the max is 295 kilowatt battery. The usage is about 2 miles per kilowatt. So we're going to get about 150 mile range. Our route is
loaded. So you'd have a fully loaded trailer.
Yeah. So keep in mind, this is all pen to paper right now, Nate. Next month, if we did this again in 2 months, I'd be able to give you some real world. But it's about a 300 kilowatt battery, 2 miles per kilowatt. Pardon me, 1 mile per every 2 kilowatts. So we're expecting 150 mile range. But you can never max that out, obviously. Our routes locally are about 100 miles, so we're right in that sweet spot to replace our local route, 8 to 5 delivery trucks. That's what we're expecting. Our straight trucks are going to be right about the same. It's a 210 kilowatt battery, and we're expecting a little less than 2 kilowatts per mile. So you can see we're right at that 100 miles. It should work really well with our application. We'll dial it back if we have to. Obviously, like Tony, we want to get max range on those. We want to send it off to our bedroom communities, which is Salem and Chehalis in our area. And each of those are anywhere between 40 and 70 miles away from our terminal. We're going to put those on the longest range local route that we can. We're certainly going to test it to begin and see what we can get. Last thing we want to do is run out of battery because it's a tow. And if any of you towed, and I'm sure you all have, it is not cheap. So we want to avoid that at all costs.
Thanks. Those are what great intelligence and data points you both provided. Again, another reason for us to revisit next year and see where your results are showing. We got another great question from the audience here. Do any of you, and this is for anyone can jump in, experience an increase in registration and insurance costs with the vehicle conversions that weigh more, is the question.
I do know, Tony, I keep wanting to refer to you as you're the, and may I say, the grandfather of this conversation.
As far as the increased cost in registration, yes, because in California you got to pay the sales tax. And the sales tax is 10 point. Well, depends on where county you reside in. In LA, it's 9.5%. And when you take a truck that's 375,000, 400, 420, 450. And you put that on top of that, it hurts. But California on the renewing of it, I have seen where we were running battery electric trucks and we kept those trucks for 2 years. And when we did the registrations on them, our registration cost was $1,600. Now I think California, and I need to look into this, has a exemption for battery electric trucks, but we were paying $1,600 on the renewal of those registrations. Now so we got our first battery electric trucks in September of last year. We got 2. So as those registrations come up, I will be able to look to see if number one, that was based off cost we were demoing the truck, and number 2, to see if they do have an exemption for registering these trucks. As far as insurance, we have a large fleet. So it kind of rolled in there. We didn't see our insurance costs go up. Actually, our insurance costs went down because we have an awesome safety department that keep pushing our drivers to be very safe on the road. So we didn't see an increase in our insurance costs.
in South Carolina, North Carolina, well, South Carolina, um, when we were building our box trucks, I worked with Rouse Clean Tech and Ford to make sure that they stayed below a certain weight limit, and that included the people that made the body. So we stayed within that weight limit. Um, as far as the fuel systems for the Freightliners Cummings, for the CNGs, it doesn't really add that much weight. It actually takes some weight off of it. Um, and it's based on your payload too in South Carolina. How much, like 65,000 pounds you're going to be carrying or 80,000 pounds you're going to be carrying. It's how you register it. So yes, the registration goes up just a little because of, like you said, sales tax and the initial purchase of the truck. But as the next year comes, it usually levels out to what you would be paying for any other truck. The insurance, of course, the insurance is going to go up is not based on the weight of my vehicle or the type of vehicle, is based on the cost of the vehicle to replace. So, yes, the insurance goes up a couple thousand, $3,000 because based on like a 2020 and I've got a 2023 and it costs a little more, yeah, your insurance rate's going to go up because it's going to cost more to replace. But it's not based on the type of fuel or the weight. So I would just work with whoever's building your equipment to make sure if that is the case in the state you live in, that you try to build it to where you stay below that weight so it doesn't incur more cost for registrations and tags and RP and IFTA.
That's so smart. Great tip. Thanks for sharing that one, Lisa. We've got another and probably final question from the audience, and I may have one closing question. But I know a lot of folks are thinking about training, especially maintenance and drivers. And so if any of you could share how you are planning or currently training your staff to perform maintenance on these vehicles, either CNG or battery electrics or fuel cell, and then, of course, any special driver training.
It's an important question. Fortunately, Titan, we've been working with EVs, at least our forklifts, for a decade now. And our internal staff have really been able to understand that piece of equipment. But because the battery electric truck is a different animal, we are expecting less maintenance, but we certainly don't know what we're doing yet. So we've created a consortium between our city fleet. City of Portland is receiving electric trucks, so we're working with them. The manufacturing facilities here, so we've invited them, the Freightliner dealer, as well as our transit agency. We've all agreed to create a stakeholder group, and we're going to convene meetings to do shared best practices, to create a preventive maintenance check sheet on what's required. And so we're going to bring all those parties together with disparate knowledge on electric and really help each other out, because from a safety standpoint, there's really only one mistake when you're dealing with a battery electric, really. So we really, we have some top local providers that we're really going to get together. So I think that's an important question to really talk about is don't go into it cold. Start partnering with those stakeholders that have experience operating battery electric vehicles in different forms, if you will, because it does really apply to that truck.
A great example. Over to either of you. Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, just real quick. What we're doing is we're getting with the OEM of the truck and saying, look, if you're saying this truck can do this, and this, then we want you to warranty the truck. And we're also buying extended warranties because we don't have on-site mechanic shop, so we rely on the OEM to provide that service. We do get the extended warranties, but we're asking that our OEMs on this new technologies to virtually sit in the seat next to us as we go down the journey, down this road, to make sure that these trucks are reliable. Because the more reliable the truck becomes, the ease the driver's range and comprehension of the truck breaking down, I guarantee it's going to generate more sales. And then as for the staff, our dispatchers will have to be trained on how to recognize when they can operate that truck. We've been in such a operating in diesel where, hey, I need you to go and take this down the road. There's diesel stations, fueling stations all over the place. That's not so for hydrogen and electric. So with this technology that comes with the truck, our dispatchers will have to look at that and make sure that they can dispatch that truck within the range that the state of charge or the fueling infrastructure.
We are going to have to wind this one down. This has been a fantastic conversation. I think there is a lot here that we could repeat and check in on in a year or a few months' time here. I want to ask each of you, as very concisely as possible, any final tips or recommendations for small and mid-sized fleets who are either planning or actually starting to adopt new clean technologies.
I started my journey in 2014 and ended up taking 3 years to buy the first 2 used CNG trucks. But what I did is I started educating myself, and I started reaching out to the people that could help educate me on the process and on the vehicles themselves. You might want to start. It might take just 1 truck, 2 trucks, 3 trucks to start with to start your fleet going green. But also know that that's 1 diesel truck that you're taking off the road. That 1 diesel truck you're taking off the road is replacing, that's the equivalent of about 40,000 cars. So, depending on you know what I mean? But the other thing is always surround yourself with education and the people that surround you. To go to your Palmetto Clean Cities meetings, go to your Tri-County or your stakeholder meetings, attend these webinars. I'm a panelist on here, but I just learned a lot from Tony and Keith. I'm going to be calling him up to ask them some questions. So, always educate yourself and never, ever give up, because no matter how small you are, the carbon imprint you're going to leave, whether it be a small one or a huge one, depending on the size of your company, will make a difference for the future. So just don't think, well, I've only got 3 trucks, I do not need to go green. You need to go green. So what we leave behind is our carbon footprint. I don't want my legacy to be that I left behind a dirty environment. I want our legacy to be that we try to clean up the environment. I want my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren to be able to breathe. I want the animals to stay alive. So if we don't start small, then go big, you'll never start at all, but at least take the first step and educate yourself.
I couldn't think of a better way to end this. So I want to thank all 3 of our speakers here. We ran up against time. Clearly, there is a lot more we could be talking about. We're going to have to wrap up the webinar here, but thank you, Lisa, Tony, and Keith for joining the discussion today. For all of you participating, look out for the follow-up email with the recorded link by early next week. The recording will also be posted to stateofsustainablefleets.com and the ACT News website. Don't forget to join us at ACT Expo on May 1, and that will be for the live launch of the next State of Sustainable Fleets market brief. Plus, you can join 10,000 other people who are going to be seen, including the folks here, who are going to be there with the OEMs and the infrastructure providers, looking at the technology itself, talking, getting your questions answered. Thank you to everyone. Have a good day, and please fill out the quick 30-second survey that will pop up as you leave the webinar.